In this video, we'll look at converting units of measure. We're going to look at two different measurement systems. We'll look at the metric system, which is probably one that you're very familiar with, and we'll also look at the imperial system. Many of you are probably comfortable with the imperial system as well, but not as a result of kind of what was taught to you in school. So the metric system is the official system used in Canada. It was adopted somewhere around 1973, I believe. It's also the System International, so it's the international system. So if you take science, you'll use the SI system is what they call it, and so the international community has decided the metric system is the system that they will use. And the metric system measures things like meters, grams, and liters, whereas the imperial system is used primarily in the US, although we still use it here in Canada. If I were to ask you your height, you'd probably give it to me in imperial, feet and inches. We measure things like 2x4s using inches. So again, a use in Canada of the imperial system. And in the imperial system, some common units of measure would be inches and feet, pounds, gallons, and we'll look at a few others as well. Let's start by just reviewing the metric system. So in the metric system, there are some base units. So the base units would be the meter for distance, the gram for weight, and liters for volume. To each of those base units, we can add a prefix, so a little part that goes at the beginning of the word to indicate larger or smaller values. So here's an example. Here's the word meter, and we use the prefix milli to indicate that this is smaller than a meter, and it's we'll talk a little bit more about how it's a thousandth of a meter. That's the word I was looking for. And we can see the same sort of thing here. We've got that prefix milli applied to gram, and that same prefix milli applied to liters. So you can see those base units here, just getting those prefixes attached to it. And I've listed the prefixes down here in this nice little diagram. So the base units are listed here in the center. And we can move either to the right or to the left. The nice thing about this system that makes it really simple is that each jump to the left or to the right is basically a power of 10, like multiplying or dividing by 10. So that's what's really nice about this system. So if I wanted to go from, let's say, the meter to the decameter, then I would multiply by 10 because I'm moving one step to the right. If instead I wanted to go from the meter to the kilometer, I would divide by 10 and then 10 again and then 10 again. So that's actually dividing by 10 3 times. So that would be equivalent to 1,000 dividing by 1,000. And we'll do an example so you can see it. So again, we can do that going the opposite way. If we go the opposite way, if we move to the left, we're multiplying instead of dividing. And every step here, we multiply by 10. So we just basically count how many times do we need to multiply or divide by 10, and we can go ahead and do that. So let's look at an example here so you can see what this looks like. So we're going to convert 5 kilometers to meters. I should mention, I didn't mention this before, the abbreviations that we use. So for the meter, M, liters, L, grams is G, and then the prefix is listed here. So for milli, it would be an M, followed by the letter that corresponds to the base unit. So if I'm looking for a milligram, it would be mg. If I'm looking for a decigram, let's do a deciliter, it would be dl. If I'm looking for a decameter, it would be dA with an M for meter there. So that one, obviously, we need a way to distinguish between the deci and the deca, and that deca is the one that has two-letter prefix. All right, so we want to convert from kilometers to meters, and we want 5 kilometers here, and we want to go, let's try that again, 5 kilometers here, and we want to go all the way from kilometers to meters. So we're moving from the right to the left, so that's an indication here, the arrow telling us we need to multiply. We'll multiply by 10 once, we'll multiply by 10 twice, and we'll multiply by 10 3 times. So 5 kilometers times 10 3 times, and a short way to write that is like this. Or if you wanted to, you could just say, well, 10 3 times, that's just 1,000. 1 followed by 3 zeros, and we would get 5,000 meters. So let's do an example going the other way. Let me just get rid of some of this so I have room here. Let's do 250 milligrams. So that's starting here at the milligrams. Starting here, there we go, at the milligrams. We have 250 of those, and we want to go all the way to the grams. So there's one step, there's a second step, and here's finally a third step. So again, in this case, we're multiplying or dividing by 10 3 times, and because we're moving from the left to the right, sorry, this one right here, we're going to divide. So we take our 250, and we're going to divide it by 10 3 times because we took 3 steps. If I wanted to go to like from milligrams to kilograms, we would just keep going and divide by 10 again, and divide by 10 again, and divide by 10 again. But because we were only moving 3 steps here, we're dividing by 10 3 times. As I said, if you prefer, you could write that as 250 divided by 1,000, which would equal 0.25. And this would be in grams. So 250 milligrams would equal 1/4 of a gram. All right, so that's using the metric system. Let's move on to the imperial system. As I mentioned, we still use it for a lot of things in Canada. The downside to the imperial system is that it does not use a common conversion factor. So in the metric system, the conversion factor was always some multiple of 10. That's not the case here. And you can see in this table here, for length, it tells us that there are 12 inches in a foot, 3 feet in a yard, and 1,760 yards in a mile. And so if we are going to the right, we divide, and if we're going to the left, we would multiply. So if I want to figure out how many inches are in a certain number of yards, I would have to go from the right to the left. So I would multiply, and I would multiply for each step. So I would multiply by 3 to get yards to feet, and then multiply by 12 to get feet to inches. Let's have a look at an example. So the question here is how many fluid ounces, are in half a gallon of paint. So we're going to start here at the gallon, and we want to go to fluid ounces. So we know that we have 0.5 gallons. So to go from gallons to quarts, we would have to multiply by 4. So 0.5 times 4, this would tell us that we have 2 quarts. And then to go from quarts to pints, we have to, again, the conversion factor is a 2, so we would multiply by 2 because we're moving from the right to the left. So 2 quarts times 2 would give us 4 pints. And then the last step here is to go from pints to fluid ounces. Again, the conversion factor is 16. We're going from right to left, so we would end up multiplying by 16. So 4 times 16 works out to, I guess, 64. I did that right? 32, and yeah. So 0.5 gallons would equal 64 fluid ounces. And if we wanted to go the opposite way, instead of multiplying, we would divide. So there's a quick summary of how to do some conversions in some of the different metric systems.